Hey guys, it's Brad Laurie or BlockchainBrad. Today I'm honoured to speak with one of the co-founders of Terra. And that's right, it's a stable coin. It's something that many people are familiar with, or perhaps if you know anything about stable coins themselves, there's a buzzword right now with regard to what they are, what they do. And we have Daniel Shin. He is one of the co-founders, as I said, and the CEO in the hot seat right now to explain all about Terra. Dan, thank you very much, mate, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Now, Terra itself, the slogan that's presented on the website is powering the innovation of money. Interesting because you want to stabilize money by essentially having a price-stable cryptocurrency. So can you talk us through the first part, the essential component of the what? What is Terra? What is a stablecoin? And why are they relevant?
Sure. So we thought a lot about how do you drive real adoption of cryptocurrency, and we said, there's several components. First and foremost is stability, and the second is the ability to distribute it not through exchanges but to where real customers are today. Mm-hmm. So the first component of what we have is a algorithmic stablecoin, and we can go into why that's interesting because we use the growth of the Terra economy to reinvest that as discounts or kickbacks so that consumers would want to use Terra and are incentivized. Mm-hmm. And on top of Terra, we're building a payment network, much like Alipay, much like PayPal, that will connect with e-commerce platforms across the world and drive real adoption and real usership.
Okay, so stablecoin itself, let's do some comparisons to fiat for a moment. Now, we have the references of digital fiat right now when we've seen paper money turn into digital money. So what sets stablecoins apart for those who are not familiar? What's the difference and why do they even matter in the context of digitizing money?
Well, I think you can attack stablecoins from many different angles, but the component that we found the most interesting are twofold. The first is we're able to peg Terra to many different fiat currencies around the world, whether it's USD, JPY, the Chinese yuan, and we're able to essentially atomically swap between these currencies so that cross-border e-commerce becomes seamless. So even if you use Stripe, which is cutting-edge technology today, you're paying 4 or 5% per transaction for cross-border commerce, and having a stablecoin that pegs to each national currency and the ability to atomically swap between them is going to massively power cross-border commerce moving forward. The second component...
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the second component is quite simply why governments like to issue money. So the ability to issue money is you're able to profit off of the Seigniorage or the growth in the GDP of the country. So if the economy grows, you print money and you're able to take that money and reinvest that into many things that further drive the growth of the economy. And I think that's a very, very powerful tool that only governments have taken advantage of until now.
Right. Now, we've seen the emergence of all kinds of cryptocurrencies, or more so blockchain-centric initiatives and startups emerge to try and break down silos, whether that be in business or whether that be in cryptocurrencies themselves, especially in the macro sense. Now, I want to try and understand your role in terms of the more global currency scenario for countries, as you've mentioned. So the idea of a stablecoin is to break down those country-by-country silos so that each of them can interact, much like the lingua franca of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we intend to play that role. And it's not just a matter of technology. You actually need volume in each of these countries. And we see the growing industry of e-commerce as the conduit to drive that volume. Alibaba, Amazon, and even the smaller e-commerce companies are becoming more and more global, and their audience is coming from more and more countries. And I think the ability to power cross-border commerce will not only be a great business, but would also allow us to drive volume in each of these countries, which allows us to serve the purpose of what you described.
Right. So how does it advantage countries though? So obviously they have their own economies. They want to protect them as much as possible. Is there any risks inherent with adopting a stable coin and accepting that as a modality or a conduit between their currency and other currencies of the world? Because it's almost as if you're the modem, you're that hub between the two different points of transfer. So why would a country who has its own economy with its own digital fiat systems use you? What's the benefit for them?
Well, I think it's a catch-22. So on one hand, all governments hate to lose control over, capital control being one of the biggest powers that each government have. On the other hand, what Terra provides is a very, very efficient way to transact. So lots of businesses are paying 2, 3, 4, 5% on each transaction, and that's a huge cost line item in each of their P&Ls. So making businesses more profitable is obviously an agenda of the government. And secondly, the ability to move money freely in theory. So if you're working abroad, and the ability to send that money back home and not be taxed 20% on that remittance is obviously benefiting the consumers, and hopefully governments appreciate that as well.
Right. Now we see the emergence of top coins, for example, Stellar. I mentioned Stellar in the context of remittance because already it's acting in a very successful way in its trial phase with various countries around the world. So in that context, it's already operational, it's already on the market. Do you see yourselves in some respects as something like that, but again, obviously stable? Because Stellar isn't, as stable by design. It's fluctuating, it's volatile, it's on the market, but certainly it has that payment and settlement aspect to its design.
Yeah, I think there's some overlap in ambition. Having said that, we think stability is paramount to drive real-life transactions and drive long-term adoption. And secondly, not only do you need to be efficient, but you also need to truly incentivize people to switch off of the products that they've used previously onto new technologies. And that transition could be quite costly. And the ability to use the Seigniorage in Terra's economy and give 5% back on every transaction, or really incentivize holding onto Terra, I think all these benefits that we can provide as incentives is what's going to drive real adoption, which is severely lacking in the blockchain economy.
Right. Now, obviously, you need to have really good tech to be able to do this. So talk us through that comes from the white paper, because obviously that's just a theoretical underpinning that started Terra. What's actualized now? Where's the proof in some of these tech pieces working, and what are they, and how successful are they actually in the tests that you've done?
Yeah, so there's really 3 components to what we're building. The first is the blockchain layer, that is the infrastructure for all. The second is obviously the Terra and Luna, a second coin that interacts with each other to keep Terra stable at all times. And then the final component is the payments layer that integrates with e-commerce platforms across the world. So we're pretty much finished developing all 3 of those components, and we'll go live in the next month or so. The blockchain component, we built our independent DPoS blockchain using Tendermint consensus, and in test phases, we've seen TPS of up to 7,000 transactions per second. We've obviously made conscious trade-offs in number of nodes and whatnot to be able to achieve that. But we think for the objective of getting Terra widely adopted and used, we've really tailored our solution for that. On designing Terra and Luna, the economy, we've really put a lot of thought into it, and would encourage anyone to read our white paper. Terra is, again, an algorithmic stablecoin that elastically contracts and expands the supply to keep the price stable at all times. And the biggest problem, the biggest elephant in the room, is what collateralizes Terra in the times of depressions. And we use a second token called Luna that receives transaction fees from Terra's economy to be able to collateralize Terra. And we've ran many, many models, and we're very, very confident that this method is going to stay robust for the long term.
I see.
And then last but not least, we have the payment component that acts like Stripe and integrates into e-commerce companies seamlessly.
Right. So you have the 3 layers, and that's quite interesting that you have that other part with Luna. Now, is that actually a token by design, Luna itself?
Yeah, Luna is the mining token for our ecosystem. So Luna miners obviously work to validate the transactions of Terra. And in return for the work that they do, they receive mining rewards in the form of Terra's transaction fees. So recall that the main use case for Terra is powering the payments for e-commerce. And so every transaction that Terra powers, we take anywhere from 10 to say 50 basis points on the transaction. We take that transaction fee and we pay that as mining rewards to Luna, thereby giving Luna a concrete underlying value.
Okay, so it's that part's really clear with regard to the mining. Have you done any tests though in enterprise scenarios? Albeit just test phases where you have perhaps some sort of model in which you've applied this to expect the outcomes in real world contexts. Have you done anything like that? Because obviously this is going to be applied to enterprise.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of testing with our initial partners, but obviously, unless Terra and Luna are traded on exchanges and the transactions go live in the platforms themselves, I don't. It's tough for me to say that that's representative of a real action.
Right. Now, with security, I want to talk to you about that. I listened to your explanation. You mentioned that essentially for it to have high throughput, you've had to have a reduced number of nodes. Now that no doubt will expand over time. The TPS, I think you also said, was around 7,000. That's sound for now for your functionality, but that'll have to increase over time because of what you are essentially, because you'll need to scale. So have you built in measures of security and increase scalability for the future in your plan? Especially with the increase of nodes, for example, is that planned as well?
Yeah, so I think first off, we think the Tendermint team has done a great job of simplifying the validation process without sacrificing security or governance. So part of that, we really piggyback on the work that they've done. For us, we start with fewer nodes than most other mainnets, but the plan is to gradually increase them over time. Myself, my co-founder, were serial entrepreneurs. We've built businesses before, and obviously, we don't want to come out with a grand plan that we can't execute on. We want to start with something that we can grasp and want to scale that gradually but surely over time.
Got it. Now, let's talk about, I guess, one of the elephants in the room, and that is the utility token model. Now, it's always an anomaly in one sense when I'm talking to someone who represents a stablecoin to then talk in the context of utility, because the complexities there are payment to the argument of settlement versus utility. So can you talk us through how you can actually be, by nature and by your core design, a utility, especially when we see speculators speculating on the potential growth of a utility, given that token metrics can arguably do that can actually provide evidence of potential growth in the future if things play out the way that the design's meant to be. But in a stablecoin sense, the price of a stablecoin is meant to be stable over time. So what's the value for someone to go and speculate and enter into a market, into a utility token, not an investment, and designed to be stable?
Yeah, so we're not asking investors to invest into Terra, the stable token. That obviously, as you mentioned, would not be wise because
it wouldn't make sense.
The price will not appreciate over time. Obviously, if you think Bitcoin's on a downward curve, you can kind of switch off of that, similar to the USDT case.
Got it. As everyone sees.
As a standalone investment, it doesn't make sense. The investor token that we provide is the Luna token.
Okay.
So what is Luna? Like I said, it receives transaction fees from Terra. So as Terra connects with more e-commerce companies across the world, and as Terra's transaction volume increases, the amount that's paid as mining rewards to Luna as a whole increases over time. So investing into Luna is a bet that Terra will become more adopted, more integrated, and will drive more transactions in the future.
Okay, got it. So how will that be accessible as well, Dan, in the future with regard to exchanges, for example? Will they be both on exchange? Obviously, the one would need to be, and that's clearly the stablecoin itself, so people can go and hedge if they wish to in the volatility scenario. But will they also be able to access Luna on exchange as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
so they'll both be exchanges, yeah.
And will they synergize in time? Will they both be listed on exchanges simultaneously, or will that happen in different time periods?
We'll list both of them together because, like I said, Terra, the more distribution that we can give it, whether it's in the form of e-commerce payments or in the form of exchanges, the more likely that Terra's economy is going to grow. On Luna's side, keep in mind that we use Luna and the market value of it as collateral. And how do we define market value? It's what it's being traded at on exchanges. So we need both of them to live on exchanges for this ecosystem to work.
Right. So now let's talk about the name of the coin itself. Now it's called stablecoin. Do you think that that's almost redundant in the sense that you're trying to be essentially a kind of digital fiat in a way, or a contemporary one, or a next generation one by being stable? So why do we need to have the title of stable when you're emerging as arguably a real cryptocurrency?
Well, I think it really hinges on where we came from in the short history of cryptocurrencies, where people are used to a very, very, very volatile cryptocurrency that swings upwards 100x and downwards 100x in the matter of a couple of months. Right. So I think we coined it stable coin so that we differentiate that from all the other coins that we're used to. Having said that, we firmly believe in order to drive real adoption across the world, whatever that underlying currency is needs to be not only stable, but at least in the countries that we operate in, it needs to peg to that country's currency. So we've spoken to many e-commerce partners that are part of our Terra Alliance, and we've asked them, do you mind if we settle in USD? And while USD is the de facto currency of the world, nobody wants to be settled in USD because they don't want that exposure versus the local currency. So not only do you need to be stable, you need to be pegged to the very currency that the local business operates in.
Right, and surely that also advantages the local economies, the national economies around the world, because you're breaking down that top-down control that we've seen for a very long time when it comes to that universal USD powerhouse that it is. So in that respect, talk us through this alliance you've mentioned. What are the countries involved, or who are the countries involved? How far-reaching is this alliance? Because obviously this is directly correlating with compliance and legals.
Yeah, so that's actually the component that I think differentiates Terra versus many other projects, is that we launch with a alliance of 20 major platforms, unicorn platforms that collectively do over $30 billion of transactions per year. So they've all, from founder down to CTO down to a legal manager, have all agreed to push us at Genesis. And if we're able to capture 10% of the volume, then that's $3 billion a year in transactions. If we're able to capture 30%, that's almost $10 billion of transaction in year one. And we think that's very much feasible and very, very different from the conceptual projects that have come before.
Right. So in terms of other competitors in the market, do you feel, based on evidence, based on the progress you've made so far, that you are potentially going to have one of those first market moves? You're going to have one of those leading market moves because of the advances you've made from the beginning to now?
Yeah, we hope to really show the world that cryptocurrencies can indeed be in the hands of hundreds of millions of people and add everyday value, which
Right.
has not been accomplished up till now.
Okay, so what have you done to assert your legal position? For example, with the SEC or CFTC or whomever you need to speak with, in Europe, for example, who are you talking to? What have you done to secure the confidence in the nations that you work with that you can be, again, cross-nation, international by design, and meet the needs of their legal requirements? Do you have a legal team?
Of course, yes. We've spent a lot of time in hiring the finest in the legal department, obviously because it's a very complex legal problem, right? We have multiple products that span multiple geographies, and we need legal guidance on each of those components. Mm-hmm. What we've done so far is we've gotten legal opinions in jurisdictions that we intend to be active in, stating that Luna is not a security and a utility token. Mm-hmm. And the quick reasoning behind that is Luna holders are not receiving passive income. They either need to actively validate transactions or stake their Luna behind other nodes and validators in order to be able to receive that. So the activity behind the return is deeming Luna a utility rather than a security. Right. The other work that we've done is we've started to get e-money licenses in some of the countries. Not Europe. We're actually playing in South Korea and Southeast Asia. So we started to get e-money licenses in some of those countries. So we've either received or are in the process of receiving those licenses, and we're optimistic that we'll get them.
Right. Okay. So that's pending now, but you put the process. You made that something that's an agenda, a key part of your plan. Now, what about with regard to registrations for Terra itself? Where are you registered?
From a token listing perspective, or
as a company perspective.
Oh, so we're a Singapore registered company.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good because that's one of the leading hubs for blockchain, and they're one of the most, I wouldn't say lenient, but they're one of the most progressive in that they are really promoting the benefits of blockchain, especially in the enterprise sector. So what kind of business model assessments have you done? What kind of businesses do you think will adopt this and utilize this? I ask you this because we've seen JP Morgan emerge with some sort of coin that arguably is more of that permission closed system for their own banking needs. But can you engage with companies and enterprises at that level with something like this?
Possibly. We haven't thought too much about that component. Our laser focus has been behind how do we capture the huge tailwinds that we see in e-commerce growth in Asia and Southeast Asia. So the market is growing, 50+% CAGR in some of these countries, and riding that growth, we think, is one of the best ways to get it into the hands of many, many people. The closest example of a tech company that became a de facto bank, I would argue, is Alipay and Ant Financial. Mm-hmm. So they piggybacked on the growth of Alibaba and got Alipay into the hands of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people, and they started to use the data to provide lending solutions and investment products. And now many Chinese workers take 2/3 of their salary and deposit that into Alipay once your salary hits. So we think a similar playbook on blockchain can make a lot of sense in the Asian countries that are not China, and so that's really the playbook that we're going after. Most stablecoins, like you mentioned, JP Morgan or USDC or USDT, they all focus on living on exchanges or existing financial infrastructure, whereas the playbook that we're going after is much more retail, much more consumer focused.
Got it. Now let's talk about when you do list. Are you going to be listing more in the cryptocurrency exchange domain, or are you considering really building this out into more of the mainstream regulated exchanges, where you really do become taken seriously at that level for mainstream audiences globally?
So our ambition is to be listed everywhere. Initially, the listing jurisdictions will overlap with where we launch our payment product. So we're a bit different with other projects in that many projects launch a cryptocurrency and then figure out a use case behind it. For us, we have a use case and we have partners that are ready to drive volume behind it. And in order for us to transact and settle, we need the cryptocurrencies to be traded in that country. So for example, we launched with our first Korean e-commerce partner that drives $3.5 billion in yearly volume in the next month or so. And in order to meet that transaction, we need to be listed here in Korea.
Got it. So Dan, you have done a lot of work clearly in trying to set up these arrangements with all these parties. Much like when I was speaking with Hashgraph. Now, I'm not a token holder and I'm certainly not shilling them, but they had a company behind them called Swirlds. And well, I'm not sure if they were a company, but they were an association or a foundation of a lot of different enterprise parties. Now, in this context with your alliance, you've clearly done a lot of work to prepare for, as you said, the use case to be real.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give a little bit of background, I come from an e-commerce background myself. So I built one of the largest e-commerce companies in Korea, and I grew the company as the CEO and founder for 7 to 8 years. So right about the time where I brought e-commerce to Korea, lots of entrepreneurs were bringing e-commerce to their respective countries in Southeast Asia, and we would meet or get on calls regularly to share problems that need to get solved. How do we do logistics? How do we do payments? How do we do merchandising? And we've gotten quite close. So the foundation behind Terra Alliance is the group of entrepreneurs that really battled together and really won out at the end of Asian e-commerce race.
Right.
And the common thread between all of them is that they found payments to be extremely expensive, cross-border payments to be a huge headache, and we wanted to solve that for them. And we think blockchain is a huge application behind this.
Okay, so the blockchain has a real mechanism for cost saving for all parties, essentially, for the user, for the one who's doing the remittance, but also for the entities themselves. And as you said, blockchain affords that mechanism without requiring you as an entity to be completely decentralized. It's more the mechanisms that allow that. And I think a lot of people get that confused. Now, I want to talk to you about your raise, because as you mentioned, there's going to be a dual token model. What happened there for full transparency? Give us a rundown on how you raised. Was it fair? Because a lot of bullshit happens in this space and there's no nice way to say it. So I want to get a take from you as the CEO. How transparent and how open was the way in which you've raised so far to get capital to really build this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been extremely transparent. So we've mostly raised from institutionals. I would say, 98, 90%, 99% of the money that we raised were from very sophisticated institutions like Binance Labs or Huobi Capital or OKEX, Polychain in the US, Kakao here in Korea. So all investors who do their fair amount of due diligence and understand the merits of a project before investing behind them.
And talk us through the lockups as well, Dan. That's obviously important. We don't want to see pump and dump situations and scenarios. And obviously in your context, it would be unusual to see that given you're a stablecoin design. But what were the lockup deals?
So most people are locked up anywhere between 12 to 24 months.
Okay.
So actually you'll see very, very small forced liquidity within the first 12 months. And we're actually speaking with our initial exchanges about how to create sufficient volume so that retail investors can get involved.
Mate, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there's a lot of fake volume out there with a lot of exchanges. There seems to be a predominance of that from certain regions in Asia. And I won't name which country, I'll let the people decide that. But there is a predominance just generally of fake volume. Obviously, you're aware of that. So how are you addressing some of those concerns to make sure you have the reputation right from the outset that really stands true of Terra for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think lots of the times the fake volume is driven by the exchanges, whether it's the exchanges proactively creating that fake volume or openly allowing the fake volume to happen. So I think it's really about doing due diligence around the exchanges that we partner with and making sure that they're ones that are focused on creating a good customer experience rather than a very short-minded exchange. So part of the reason why we've added so many exchanges to our investor list, Binance, Huobi, OKEX, Upbit, CoinCheck, etc., is so that we can build a relationship with them and understand who to work with and who to not.
Got it. Now, speaking of who to work with, I noticed that you've partnered with Tomochain as one of obviously many. So talk us through how, or at the very least, having discussions with them. Because when I spoke with Luong Vuong, he was considering partnering with you. Now, many different blockchains, that's just one example, obviously want to work with a stablecoin. Can you tell us who you, if you can disclose any of these, and can you also tell us why they would do that? What's the benefit for a blockchain startup who's got their own, who have their own utility token and robust token economic model? Why would they work with something that's stable?
Yeah, I think so. First off, like you said, we partnered with Tomochain in Southeast Asia. We've partnered with Clayton in Korea.
Oh wow, that's Kakao connection there. That's very strong.
Yeah, Kakao is not only one of our largest investors, but we've partnered with their project as well. We've with Ontology in China. So we've made sure to partner with the top blockchain projects in each region, at least in Asia, because that's where we intend to play in the beginning.
Okay.
The meat around the partnership is really simple. We want to provide a cross-chain offering where you can lock up a volume of Terra on our chain and release that on Tomochain or Clayton or Ontology, where the DApps on their ecosystem can use Terra as a stable token. And I think, I think it's almost a known fact around the world that lots of DApps used volatile tokens as their currencies to pay their stakeholders.
You're too nice. You're too nice, I think, the way you're saying that.
Yeah. So I think everyone recognizes the need for that, and building a bridge and a cross-chain solution is one of our biggest initiatives.
This could be really big because having spoken to so many projects as well, Dan, many of them didn't cash out in their Ethereum or in their BTC. So what happened was many of these guys right now are really struggling financially because they just didn't prepare in that bear. So what you're saying is you could act as literally that hedge and that vault in a cross-chain scenario to really give these projects confidence to actually make it in the future. And this could be really big because this could be a significant number of dApps or a significant number of startups that are onboarding onto these platforms. If we're talking about the likes of Ontology, for example, and Tomo in Vietnam, I mean, these are representative of countries. So the potential for you arguably is quite substantial.
Yeah, so I think, we're making a two-pronged bet. One, we know is the growth behind e-commerce, and the other is the growth of the blockchain economy. And our bet in the latter is through successful mainnet projects in each of the countries.
Got it.
Like you said, I think the benefits of having experienced the past 12, 24 months is that now everyone knows that stability is important. Not only is it important for the projects, but it's important for the stakeholders within the mini economies that they're building, because nobody wants to be paid in something that drops
Exactly. Right. And even speculators, and I myself included, having been someone who has, dare I say, invested, I'll be bold enough to say that, into ICOs, because even though it's not an investment, people regard it like that in the speculative frame. And so many people did lose their utility investment, if we can say that, because of the volatility of the entire ecosystem. Now, I want to talk to you about IEOs, because you would know about them. Certainly that's the conversation of the day right now in terms of trying for exchange to garner attention and profit. Is this something that's going to impinge in any way in the stablecoin plan, or is it, not even relevant?
Yeah, I don't know if that's very relevant for us. I think, ICOs have not been performing well, and IEO is like the next bubbly thing that people have responded to.
Right.
But for us, we've always been telling ourselves, hey, like, we don't want money. We don't want to depend on the retail investor base to take their money. We really want to work with a sophisticated group of institutional investors, and that can add strategic value to us, and we can add back to them. And in that case, IEO, ICO is pretty irrelevant.
Got it. Okay, now here's a tougher one. Now, your token Terra, I'm not sure of the ticker. What will the ticker be for the stablecoin itself?
We haven't fully decided, but we're looking at TRA at the moment.
Okay, well, let's just hypothetically say TRA until it's finalized. Now, people will be able to speculate on TRA because it'll be on exchanges. So do you expect that people just simply won't engage? Because, again, it would be odd, but I always find that, it's almost an anomaly that the exchanges can be accessible to the speculator for something that's not really designed for that at all. It's really meant to be a different use case, and that is for actual transactions. So do you anticipate that people will use it solely like in the USDT sense, where it'll be just used to hedge, much like people are treating BTC in some respects now when they need to move their money away from what they call the alt market?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, I do think there will be, unintended speculation.
Because of hype and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, not only hype, but not everyone knows that the intended investment token for our ecosystem is Luna, not Terra. But people could quite simply say, hey, I want to back Terra and buy Terra, which is intended to be stable.
Got it. Well, I just want to jump in there and remind people. So remember, it's not Earth, it's the moon, because Luna is the investment coin in that sense.
Yeah. But having said that, I think time will solve it, because people will see Terra on e-commerce, and you'll be able to pay for water, for laptops, for clothing, for movie tickets. And once a currency is exchangeable for all these goods and services that you buy in your life, that's the easiest way to build trust and value behind that currency. And once it's pegged to all the products that I consume behind, then the value of the currency is very clear. I think the time will solve that issue.
So, to wrap up, Dan, are you essentially a better BTC? And I'm not suggesting that BTC doesn't have its value as an SOV, as many people love, as a vault, a decentralized vault people can then autonomously use for transactions in a peer-to-peer scenario. But I'm asking you in the sense of the Satoshian, ideal of P2P, B2B cash, the means of transactability of ease. Is this really the potential? Could it be that simple of a scenario where it's about reducing things down to that stability so it can be so globally transactable?
Absolutely. So I think we at Terra have tremendous amount of respect for what BTC. I mean, BTC is really why we're all here, right? But when we looked at the design of Bitcoin, the single token BTC is doing too much, right? It needs to be the mining token. It needs to also be the transactional token. It also needs to be a store of value.
Everything.
And one token can do only so much. It actually contradicts each other, because a transactional token fundamentally needs to be stable, whereas investors want to back something that's not stable, right?
Exactly.
So we essentially separated those two things together, where we have a stable utility token and another token that grows with linearly with the size of the economy. And so, yeah, I think our ambitions are very, very much aligned to what Bitcoin wanted to do.
Got it. And I just want to clarify for everyone, including myself. Now, when I mean investment, I want to clarify and really explain. I mean utility, but I mean one in which can have that almost secure utility, nuance, because it is a utility by design. These are both utilities. But Dan, it's been really enlightening. Thank you so much for allowing us to have a better understanding of Terra. You've really certainly educated me a great deal today off the cuff with this discussion. Hopefully we can do a part 2, if that's okay, sometime in the future. But Dan, is there anything you'd like to say as a final statement to represent your team, to let people know where they can access more information? Anything at all as a final statement?
Yeah, I mean, there's information on Terra on Medium as well as Telegram and our website. But I think at the end of the day, we saw lots of projects that really were born conceptually, but never actually got translated to real consumer value. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, we had this thesis where if we can band together independent e-commerce companies across the world, we can get cryptocurrencies into the hands of hundreds of millions of people, beyond the retail investors that are simply speculating on cryptocurrencies. And I think that could be the next wave of the growth of this industry. And
absolutely,
hopefully we can contribute.
Well, hopefully at some point in the future, we see ATMs, the machines that pop up throughout Asia, where people can go and access your coin, to transact for real products and services. I mean, that would be one of the ideals, obviously, for your team. Have you thought about something that far ahead?
Absolutely. I think, ATMs, plastic cards that are linked to Terra, QR codes.
QR codes are a great idea because they're so easy on phones.
Yeah, so I think all of that is in the pipeline. We still think e-commerce is the fastest way to capture the most number of SKUs and the most number of customers, because e-commerce platform, take Amazon, what is it? It's basically amalgamation of like millions of stores, right? So we think that's the fastest way. But for example, we partnered with the government of Mongolia, and because e-commerce is not as developed in Mongolia, our initial use case is going to be for paying for electricity or for bills or for taxes or for offline payments. And so we intend to address both, somewhat depending on the market that we're targeting.
Right. So that sounds like an example of several different countries, no doubt, that you've partnered with. So can you just state on record, is there a significant pipeline of a business planned? Because obviously, as you mentioned before, you want that revenue to come from the top down, from the institutional sector, where the big money comes flowing in. Can we expect, as you start to move forward now, to really see some significant releases of information with substantial partnerships to back them up?
Oh, absolutely. I think, we have a very long pipeline of $1 billion+ e-commerce companies that have already agreed or will agree to work with us. Mm-hmm. And we'll release those partnerships, just about every month. And, I don't want to say we got those partnerships because we're really good at business development. We may be pretty good at it, but I think the value proposition that we're offering to these platforms is unparalleled. So we're dropping their credit card fees from, again, 4 or 5% down to 10, 20 basis points. So they're going to be saving tens of millions of dollars. And using Seigniorage, we're going to be giving discount coupons and paybacks on the products that they sell. What does that mean? It's actually making the very products that they sell on their platforms cheaper. And being cheap and price competitive is the lifeline of an e-commerce company, where you can quickly comparison shop them on Google or a search engine. So I think we're actually touching on the very fundamentals of e-commerce platforms, which is cutting costs for them and also really making their products cheaper for their consumers.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, as I said before, you've touched on a lot tonight. I really appreciate your time, mate. And I'd love to do a chapter 2 or to really extrapolate and expand more on what you're doing. Clearly, exciting things to come. I did want to ask you, though, one more thing, and that's with regard to Luna. Now, what is to be expected? How much will be accessible on exchanges when it does hit in terms of, supply? How easy will it be for people to go and interact and experiment with purchases in speculative sense, obviously, because it is a utility, but how will they be able to go and access it, and how much?
Right. So again, we sold about 30 to 40% of the tokens to investors, and I would say those are the tokens that will become distributed over the next 24 months. Having said that, we were very conscious about finding institutional investors that are long-term holders. So we actually don't think a lot of our investors will sell in the first 12 months.
It will be interesting to see what happens. So arguably it will be quite scarce and there'll be limited liquidity there for Luna.
Yeah, so we're speaking with each of the initial exchanges that we're launching with to really discuss what volume and what liquidity we need to provide, so that it's not uber scarce, because I think uber scarcity and the price of a token going up 50, 60x is also unhealthy for the token.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because recently we saw the likes of Cosmos emerge, and it really did have quite an astounding change in price when it did list. I think it was 97x or something from its original. So again, you sort of allude to something important, that is having the right kind of legitimate market making support, or the right liquidity support from the exchanges that are going to support you. Again, legitimacy, clearly you are aligned with that word, in everything you do with your e-commerce background. But are you also aware of the inherent risks of some of these other places, these other exchanges, where their narrative is often not being transparent? So you don't get duped or tricked into scenarios that may not be aligned with your legitimate stance. Have you made sure you've done all your DD on all of these potential partners of the future?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly haven't, turned the tiles on every single partner that we'll work with in the future, but I do think we have a very strong group of investors and very strong group of exchange investors that can cross-reference and check for us what other guys are doing. So,
absolutely,
obviously exchanges know best what other exchanges are doing. And I think, we're very quick to hear the word on bad reputation. So again, we hope to provide the right amount of liquidity and just, make sure that the growth of Luna's price is based on substantiated growth of Terra's economy, rather than, squeezing the supply too much, or dumping on the other side of things.
Absolutely, Dan. Well, Dan, Shin, thank you very much. You are the CEO of Terra. I really do appreciate your time. You've explained pretty much all the basics with regard to Terra. If you'd like to know more, check out the links below. And then obviously don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There'll be more information in the future. I will hopefully have discussions with Dan or other members of the team. It's a stablecoin to pay attention to, particularly if you want to know more about what's happening in the Southeast Asian and Asian domain of blockchain more generally. Registered in Singapore, one of the more reputable places in that region. Dan's a man who's not mucking around. He's quite serious about what he's trying to do. And Dan, I'll look forward to seeing you unfold. I suspect that you're going to make moves in the near future, not later. And that's why we're talking now. So I wish you all the very best as you move into that next phase.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate this time.
You're welcome, mate. And take care.